An Allied tank commander sees this shape in the distance, and his stomach drops. Not because of what it looks like, it's just a gun on wheels, but because of what everyone on that battlefield already knows about it. If that gun fires first, his tank probably doesn't survive the shot. This weapon was never built to fight tanks. It was designed to shoot down aircraft thousands of feet in the sky. This is the story of the 88 and how it became the single most feared gun on the ground in World War II. Later in this video, we'll get into the exact moment this switch happened, when German crews in the North African desert realized the same gun that had been shredding bombers out of the sky could do something just as brutal to a tank at ground level, often from a range the tank's own gun couldn't even return fire at. Entire Allied tank formations would eventually learn to change their approach routes just to avoid a suspected 88 position.
But to understand how a weapon built for the sky ended up ruling the ground, we have to start with something a little unexpected. This gun, technically, shouldn't have existed at all. After World War I, the Treaty of Versailles flatly banned Germany from developing large-caliber weapons. So German engineers at Krupp did what engineers under a restrictive treaty sometimes do. They took the work outside the country, quietly partnering with the Swedish firm Bofors to keep developing heavy guns beyond the treaty's reach. That partnership produced the first prototype in 1928, a heavy anti-aircraft gun that could rotate a full 360 degrees, automatically eject spent casings, and let a trained crew fire around 20 rounds a minute, faster than most anti-aircraft guns of the era, and quick enough to be combat-ready in under 3 minutes from a standing start. It was an impressive gun on paper. But paper specs are one thing, and this weapon was about to get tested in a real war, in a way that hinted, even then, at what it was eventually capable of, well beyond just shooting down planes. Germany sent a handful of these guns to support nationalist forces during the Spanish Civil War in the mid-1930s, and the results went beyond just aircraft. Against enemy vehicles, fortified positions, and bunkers, targets nobody had specifically designed this weapon to engage, its high velocity and heavy shell proved devastating. This is really the first crack in the idea that this was purely a sky weapon. German crews and engineers took notice, and the next production version of the gun, the Flak 36, got a key upgrade. Instead of one solid barrel that wore out and needed full replacement after roughly 900 rounds, it used a sectioned barrel that could be swapped in the field far more easily, a practical fix that kept the gun firing reliably and firing often.
By the time it reached its next refinement with better targeting instrumentation, this was a mature, battle-hardened weapon. And a few years later, in the deserts of North Africa, someone finally pointed it directly at a tank on purpose. Here's the payoff from the teaser. In 1941, during the North African campaign, German crews began deploying these guns in a direct anti-tank role against British armor, and the results were immediate and brutal. The flat trajectory, high velocity, and heavy shell meant it could punch through the armor of virtually any Allied tank fielded at that stage of the war, frequently from distances where the tank's own gun couldn't effectively shoot back. This wasn't a one-off trick. German crews got genuinely skilled at hiding these guns in concealed defensive lines, sometimes firing straight off the mobile wheeled carriage without full setup, trading a little stability for speed, get into position, fire, and relocate before counter-battery fire found them.
Allied tank crews learned to dread the sight of one in position, because engaging it often meant losing a tank or several before ever closing the distance. Germany leaned hard into this discovery. Plans to adapt this gun's ballistics into a dedicated tank weapon had actually started as early as 1936, well before North Africa proved the concept in combat, and that early groundwork eventually produced the main gun fitted to the Tiger I. The tank version used a different breech and recoil setup than the towed anti-aircraft gun, but ballistically, it fired largely the same family of ammunition. A Tiger tank, in a very real sense, carried the same reputation that had already been terrifying Allied pilots for years, just now aimed at Allied tank crews instead. Germany didn't stop at mounting the gun on the Tiger. A dedicated anti-tank version, the Pak-43, entered production by late 1943, and it's widely regarded by historians as one of the best all-around anti-tank guns of the entire war. A full 360-degree traverse capable of piercing the frontal armor of any Allied tank on the battlefield, with a maximum range over 15 kilometers when used in a supporting artillery role. That gun went on to arm a whole family of specialized tank destroyers. The Nashorn, the notorious Ferdinand, which saw brutal use at the Battle of Kursk and reportedly accounted for roughly 200 Soviet tanks destroyed, despite early mechanical problems, and later the Jagdpanther, a fast, low-profile tank hunter respected on every front it appeared on. Interestingly, the Allies actually had anti-aircraft guns with arguably better raw numbers. The British 94mm and American 90mm could each fire higher and lob heavier shells on paper. But neither the British nor the Americans made the same aggressive leap Germany did, repurposing their anti-aircraft guns as a core part of their ground and anti-tank arsenal. That difference in imagination, more than raw ballistics, is a big part of why this gun became the legend it did. Now that we've covered why it became so feared on the ground, it's worth circling back to the skill that made it so effective in its original job, because the two are more connected than they first appear. Standard anti-aircraft rounds didn't need a direct hit to be devastating. Shells were fitted with fuses, some triggered by altitude, others by timed delay, designed to burst mid-air, showering the surrounding sky with well over 1,000 jagged metal fragments. A plane didn't need to be struck directly. Flying through that fragment cloud could tear into wings, fuselage, and crew. Pilots learned to recognize the distinctive dark smoke bursts these shells left behind, and the term this weapon was nicknamed after became shorthand across Allied air forces for exactly this kind of danger. What really set these crews apart wasn't just the gun, it was how precisely they aimed it. Rather than relying on each gun crew to independently track a target, batteries used centralized fire control systems, sometimes paired with early radar, to calculate a single firing solution and feed it to every gun at once. A small, coordinated command team could direct several guns onto the exact same point in the sky with a level of precision that, once the same guns were turned horizontally toward tanks, translated directly into that brutal one-shot accuracy Allied crews came to fear. A few facts worth knowing. This entire weapon exists because of a loophole in a peace treaty. Very few legendary weapons of any war can trace their origin directly back to a country deliberately routing around international restrictions by developing the technology through a foreign partner. Tiger crews often found ways to carry more ammunition than the tank was officially rated for. Standard capacity was 92 rounds stored around and beneath the turret, but crews frequently squeezed in extra shells, a small detail that says a lot about how much crews valued having more of this particular ammunition on hand. Some of the armor-piercing rounds used chemistry, not just brute force. Certain rounds used a shaped, hollow-charged design that focused an extremely hot jet of energy to burn through armor, rather than relying purely on raw kinetic impact, an early, effective use of the same basic principle behind modern shaped-charge anti-tank weapons. By 1944, German ordnance catalogs listed 19 distinct types of ammunition for this weapon family: high explosive, armor-piercing, and solid kinetic rounds among them, a reflection of just how many different battlefield roles this one gun had grown to fill.
It would be easy to credit this weapon's reputation purely to superior engineering, but the more accurate story is about flexibility and imagination. Germany had a genuinely well-designed gun, yes, but the Allies arguably had comparable or better raw numbers in some respects. What set this weapon apart was Germany's willingness to keep adapting it, pushing it into roles nobody originally designed it for, and building an entire family of specialized vehicles and ammunition around exploiting exactly what made it effective. That adaptability is really the through line of the whole story. A weapon designed to solve one very specific problem, shooting down aircraft, that became legendary because German crews and engineers kept
asking what else it could do, rather than treating its original job as a fixed limitation. This weapon never set out to be one of the most feared guns of the Second World War. It was built to solve a narrower, more technical problem, born out of a legal loophole in a treaty most people have forgotten existed. But somewhere between the skies over Spain and the deserts of North Africa, it became something much bigger than its original job description. Good enough that its reputation alone could make experienced tank crews think twice before advancing. Sometimes the most legendary weapons in history aren't the ones built for a single devastating purpose. They're the ones flexible enough to become something nobody originally intended. If you want to see what happened when the same shaped charge, armor-piercing principle behind this gun's ammunition got taken even further, let me know in the comments, because that technology has a strange and fascinating story of its own.